Uh, so I would like to welcome you all to the Tech Talk session conducted by SolutionBuggy. And today we'll be looking at green hydrogen production, a topic which has been, very much in demand. I would say. Today we talk about market opportunities and current demand, the production process, complete knowledge on the green hydrogen program, government subsidies and grants, investment, and the ROI. So, before I start, I would like to quickly introduce SolutionBuggy. We are an online platform to connect the manufacturing industries with the experts. I would like to proudly say that we are one of India's largest platform for the MSME sector, and we have almost 10,000 experts on the platform today. And we have completed more than 3,100 projects across India over the last 6 years. These projects could be anywhere like a one-day consulting assignment. It could be a training program, and all the way to setting up of industries, right from the concept to commercialization stage. About 20 plus years of experience in consulting. The reason for this webinar is to give an understanding of this much talked about sector of green hydrogen. Basically, hydrogen is, as you all know, is produced from water by the electrolysis method, and the electrical energy that is required for this, if it is used through the renewable energy sources, then it is termed as green hydrogen. If it is produced through coal or any other fossil fuels, then it becomes black, gray, etc. Again, if it is produced through nuclear energy, then it's pink hydrogen, and there are a host of colors. So as of today, I would say hydrogen is not used only in the transport or in the fuel sector, but also the steel, fertilizers, and other chemical industries as well. Over the next 90 minutes, I have a set of stellar speakers who will be talking more on this and throwing light in this sector. So with that, I will introduce our speakers for the day. Dr. Pranjal Fukan, who is the author of the book Limits to Infinity. He has about 25 years of experience in the supply chain and operations management in the energy and logistics sector. He is a certified leader and advisor startups working in bamboo processing, waste to energy conversion, and in renewable energy. He is also a co-chairman of the Indian Chamber of Commerce Northeast Committee on MSME. We welcome you, Dr. Pranjal. Next, I have Mr. Mohit, who is the CEO of GPSR Arya, which is the projects platform of GPS Renewables. So prior to this, he has worked with Spectrum Renewable Energy, where he has set up bio-CNG plants. And Mohit brings, I would say, a 360-degree experience of the bio-CNG industry, covering right from project development, operations, and St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. And he has done his postgraduate degree in management from University of Nottingham and the West Bengal National University of Social Sciences. We welcome you, Mr. Mohit. Mr. Mohit, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we welcome you, Mr. Mohit. Next, I have Mr. Sulabh Gupta, who has 20 years experience in product development and new technologies in the sustainable energy sector. He has experience in the EV and batteries segment, and also in energy management and planning. Currently, he is working as GM of new technologies and is involved in planning of large hydrogen projects, especially for the export sector. We welcome you, Mr. Sulabh. Okay. So finally, I have Ms. Neha Makol. She's the assistant manager at Bridge to India, which is a consulting firm, and she specializes in the energy markets research, policy assessment, corporate renewable procurement, and business strategy. She is pursuing a PhD from University of Delhi and researching on a topic of residential rooftop solar market. She has previously worked with the Quality Council of India and holds a master's degree in resource management and design application from University of Delhi. We welcome you, Ms. Neha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to SolutionBuggy for inviting Bridge to India and me to discuss this very pertinent topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So, with that, I would now invite Dr. Pranjal to take over and walk us over the next 30 minutes about the aspect of green hydrogen, right from the production to the end usage of this particular fuel cell. Over to you, Dr.
Yes.
Pranjal.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Once again, thankful to SolutionBuggy for giving me this opportunity to speak on one of the most you can say sought after subject nowadays. Like everyone from the universities to colleges are asking me to have separate sessions for hydrogen, green hydrogen, because lots of research activities are going on. Because I know activities in CMET, Hyderabad, and IIT Guwahati, then CSIR Jorhat, they are also working on this fuel cell green hydrogens. So in today's session, basically, I have five important contents. First is I will go through the introduction to green hydrogen, what's its applications. Then we'll go for a market demands, growth potentials. Then also go on the technical parts for setting up a green hydrogen, the some technicalities, how it is being produced, and then we'll go for the challenges, opportunities which are faced by the entrepreneurs. Last but not least, just we will have a peep into the Green Hydrogen Policy 2022. So, as Prime Minister, our Honorable Prime Minister speech has already outlined that this is the outline basically in bold, that not only will green hydrogen be the basis of green growth through green jobs, but will also be set as an example for the world towards clean energy. We have already committed in COP26 that we will be carbon neutral by 2070. So it is one of the step, part of the ethanol blending, then EV, then you can say bio CNG, bio CBG. So all these things should be in line. It should be structured in such a way that our commitment to COP26 is fulfilled. Next slide. So in the next slide, this is the introduction. The introduction about how these non-conventional energy sources like solar, wind, lithium-ion, fuel cells, hydrogen cells, and many other alternative fuels, which we know earlier also like wind power, hydro, geothermal, and many other things are coming into picture through which we are basically working on to decarbonize or to mitigate the carbon emission problem under the UN SDG goals. So this is the graph where you can see the volumetric energy density versus specific energy, where it is you can see the hydrogen and hydrogen. There are three hydrogens in our circle. One is square, one is rhombus. So you can see that volumetric energy density is highest in case of hydrogen. So that's the reason it promises that these challenges can be mitigated if you properly go for this hydrogen or that to the green hydrogen. And if you see the economics, arena is a very reputed organization internationally, and they have estimated that 80% drop in green hydrogen cost will happen only if the electrolyzer cost has to go down. Because now the setting up a plant is costlier only because of electrolyzer. Other than that, if you know, the input to green hydrogen production is only water and electricity. So the main component here is electrolyzer, and due to which presently the situation is as such, the cost of green hydrogen is somewhat higher than the global average. So there are some additional factors like high capacity of renewable energy generators. We have to have the increased electrolyzers efficiency. We need to have longer lifetimes. So these are some of the economics where you can see this economics, the electricity cost plus utilization factor plus transmission and distribution cost plus electrolyzer cost, that is the capex means capital expenses, plus efficiency and degradation plus transportation, storage and other. So these three green factors are contributing to setting up of a green hydrogen production unit. Next slide. So in this coming slide, we have just introduction that some are in the gray and some are in brown and blue. You can see that hydrogen can meet the sustainability criteria as as green hydrogen, which is very much useful and which is also required for mitigating the climate change risk. Secondly, the emission from the fuel sources can also be reduced by integrating carbon capture, storage technologies, which are upcoming in the research area. So if large-scale negative impacts of climate change is to be avoided, that global temperature rise have to be limited to 1.5 degrees centigrade. It is known to all in every COP conference of people meeting. It is being stated. So we want to reach the non-fossil energy source, be it that is just 80% of the global energy demand by 2030, and 100% is expected that by 2050 we have to reach these non-conventional or non-fossil energy sources. Has to be used in all the countries, may it be south, may it be north. And global energy demand is increasing at the rate of 25% and 30%. It will be 30% by 2040. Therefore, carbonizing the plants is suggesting that there will be different world in 2050 if everything goes fine. Next slide is related to decarbonization, which is basically one of the goal of the world across for 2050. So technology here is basically the generation of generation of hydrogen, which is obviously known as universally a light and highly reactive fuel, which is through already Prasad has told that it is process is called chemical process called electrolysis. Very simple exercise where cation and anions are there. And as per the IEA, International Energy Agency, it pointed out the method of obtaining any green hydrogen can save 830 million tons of carbon dioxide globally. This will also replace all grey hydrogen which are being produced from coal in the world, which will normally require 3,000 terawatt hours per year for the new renewables. Next slide. Now I will show you how green hydrogen is obtained. So here water is used in the electrolysis process, which may contain salts and minerals depending on the quality of water from region to region. Then second point is two electrodes will be there. One is cathode, one is anode, which will be immersed in the water and which are connected to pure power source and direct current is applied. No AC, DC is applied. Number three is dissociation of hydrogen and oxygen happens where the electrode attracts ions with opposite charge. Hydrogen is positive, oxygen is negative as per the periodicity. And fourth is during the electrolysis, oxidation reaction happens. So this is the general process of production of hydrogen from electrolysis. Next slide is these are the energies. It is simple, simply known as like two cathodes are there. You can see one is green, one is red. So oxygen is goes out and hydrogen also goes out. We capture the hydrogen and we leave the oxygen to the atmosphere. So obviously it is good for the environment. So cathodic ray is given here. Four molecules of hydrogen, which is plus, means they are basically affinity to release or lose electrons. So they lose four electrons, so they becomes 2s2. And in the anodic reaction, oxygen is basically is negative. So here you can see water is broken to oxygen plus 4H plus 4E minus. So in this place, oxygen molecule and hydrogen, two molecules goes out in the atmosphere, but we capture the hydrogen in the storage tank and we use for the further use, and oxygen obviously is in the environment. Next slide. Now, if you see the uses, so for production, we can it is basically from renewable energy source use the energy direct current to activate our electrolysis to process our electrolysis process, and from there it is going for the capture of carbon. CO2 capture is another process where we can also convert this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and transform it through using synthetic fuels. We can also make synthetic fuels. We can also use nitrogen from the atmosphere for the production of ammonia. And in transportation, all are can be transported through shipping, trucks, pipeline. So normally in India, in the hydrogen policy, we are actually in the process of transferring this hydrogen either through the national gas grid, that is pipeline, or through trucks. So end users can be the industry, like steel industry can use. They are also using it. Chemical industry can use. Refineries can use. And for the heating, for the power generations also it can be used. So these are some of the few green hydrogen production and uses which are being emphasized as the most sought after processes in the upcoming economy. The next slide, actually it is part of the cost competitive stepwise route, how we can be decarbonized by 2016. If you see, there are two routes, one is hydrogen route, one is CCUS route. So in case of hydrogen route, we are going for the natural gas, synthetic gas, direct reductions. We began blending of the low carbon and hydrogen and shifting to more than 90% of hydrogen use, producing entirely from low carbon sources by 2060. However, in CC route, we are using the smelting reduction facility. The example is one example I am here showing is Hisama. Here capture happens, use and storage technologies there so that we can increase carbon capture rate to more than 90%, making it use of excess carbon wherever possible so that we can achieve this net zero by 2070. Our emphasis is 2070. If you see the second slide, where we are basically, I'm trying to show how the hydrogen can start competing with the other fossil fuels in certain application by 2030. If you see, in case of grid electricity, so there are three colors. The dark blue is capex, light blue is opex, and yellow or orange is fuel. So you can see that in grid electricity, the ammonia cost rupees per ton. In case of grid electricity, it's basically, you can see more of are the fuel. In case of RTC renewables, that is, you can see that the proportion of that fuel is more. However, in case of solar plus formation of hydrogen storage, you can see the percentage of this hydrogen is started competing across that grid electricity and RTC renewables. And how in case of solar steel tank hydrogen storage, you can see the more is of the hydrogen, where we then see the blue and light blue color is more than the orange. So in this case, you can show that the traditional conventional grid electricity process and renewables happening presently in the traditional or conventional methods, it will be it will be basically overcome by the hydrogen, which is obviously happening, and certainly it will happen by 2030, where you can see more of the hydrogen, green hydrogen will be useful for either for the electricity production or either for other activities which I have shown in the industries. And at the time, the fuels, the conventional fossil fuels will have lesser impact or lesser use. So next slide. By 2030, the cost of green hydrogens will be fall by 50%, because presently, as I shown that the cost of green hydrogen is more because of the cost of production using electrolyzers is costly. So once it goes down, so it is being anticipated by 2030, the green hydrogen cost per kg will be much lesser by 50%. So cost range for hydrogen production routes in India is that you can see here, the LCOH, that is rupees per kg. In case of grid electricity is about 200. Now off-grid solar will be, you can see the green part is coming down. Natural gas brown is obviously below 200, and the coal is in between 100 and 200. So the cost of hydrogen, green hydrogen, that is off solar grid, the green one, which and also the natural gas source from the natural gas will be lower than the traditional and conventional energy sources.
So, Dr. Pranjal, what you think is the cost today of green hydrogen is high because the cost of renewable energy that we are getting by itself is high. Is that the reason, or is there any
Yes.
other contributing?
No, there is no other reason. See, the one good thing in case of green hydrogen production is that the raw materials are very, very easily, readily available. Like we get water, water is readily available. then electricity is not of much of concern. Only concern is the electrolyzer. So the electrolyzer cost is very high at this moment because the reason behind is that still the research is still going on. So everything is not yet proven. Okay, so it's step by step process. Things are happening. Lots of works also going on. So once these things becomes commonly available and production is mass production happens, then the electrolyzer cost will obviously goes down. So once it goes down, the cost of green hydrogen will also goes down. It is similar to those things. The mobile phone 20 years back was costlier. Now mobile phones are
The
very
new
affordable.
technology
LC,
comes in costly, but once it
yes,
becomes
LCD.
mass usage, then it becomes
Yeah,
less.
LCD LED TVs are very cheaper nowadays. Earlier it was beyond 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs. Now you can get it in 15,000 also. A similar thing will happen, but it has to happen. Now coming to my earliest that slide, next slide. This is 50%. Okay, now see the demand can also grow fivefold by 2050. If you see this particular graph, the demand will also the demand will also grow. You can see by 2020 here, you can see that all the colors are given here. Like power is the ammonia is green. So by 2020, if you see the low carbon scenario between 2020 and 2050, in 2020 you can see the refining and ammonia proportion were there, and very small amount of methanol was there. But baseline is in between 2020 and 2050, where we have seen that all will come into picture. So demand for demand for green hydrogen will be is reflected in baseline. That is, it will be required for power, for transportation, for steel, for methanol, for refining, for ammonia production. And beyond 2050, you can see when we're going for the low carbon, then here you can see the maximum transportation will be on hydrogen. Then steel also will have a greater proportion of use of green hydrogen. Then refiners will also use green hydrogen. That's similar to the baseline. And ammonia also will remain similar to the baseline. And methanol also will remain to the baseline. But in 2020, these things were not seen. Only refining and ammonia production, they are basically using this green hydrogen. But slowly, when going for the low carbon regime, then you can see how these important sectors will be using green hydrogen prominently. So this is one part where it is being seen that the future of green hydrogen is very bright. Coming to the next slide, this is the virtuous circle, which is basically creating a problem regarding to where we cannot anticipate what should be the cost of hydrogen at this moment, because hydrogen technology is still in the inception stage. Because there are three things that are happening, I must tell you. One is production of green hydrogen, one is hydrogen fuel, one is fuel cell. So all three are working simultaneously across the globe. But we know the best option is actually fuel cell and hydrogen and green hydrogen, because fuel cells is the ultimate thing which will be very much helpful for the low carbon or net zero carbon, and it also makes beneficial because it will be much lighter batteries as compared to the present lithium ion batteries, which can be used very easily for the submarines, for the fighter jets. But in between, green hydrogen is also it is coming across lots of inputs to the economy. But thing is, like, there are some virtuous circle which I'm here, like falling cost. If you see the figure, the alkaline grids has if you see this figure, that the three colors are there. Again, yellow is your fuel, blue is opex, and dark blue is your capex. So in 2020 to 2050, if you see, the cost is going down. The cost across all the three are going down. In case of alkaline based grids, if you see the alkaline based solar in solar plants, again you can see that cost is dropping. Cost is dropping there also. In case of this electrolyzer PEM grids, grid wise, there also you can see the cost is going down considerably. And in solar also, if you use the electrolyzer for this process of production of green hydrogen, then there also the cost is dropping. So everywhere, in all the cases of alkaline based, whether it is grid or solar, or it is electrolyzer based grid or solar, the cost of production of green hydrogen is going to drop. Is going to drop. That's the reason I'm saying by 2050, around 50% will be a drop. And however, in between, you can see the left hand side graph. The demand is increasing. So demand is consistently increasing across all the sectors like transport, power, refineries, methanol production everywhere. And policies are also strengthened globally. It is not like the developed countries are having robust policy and developing are still thinking. No, everywhere, all countries are working across on similar lines, and they have their own policies to strengthen the use of non-conventional energy sources, primarily this green hydrogen. So in the next slide, I will show you what is the projected price trajectory for solar based green hydrogen production. Means power from solar, and how to make green hydrogen. If you see in 2030, the price here is given for the green hydrogen is in between 1.7 to 2.4 dollars per kg. RTC renewables is around 2.1 dollar per kg, and gray hydrogen is around 1.8 to 2.7 per kg. But if you go to 2050, you can see green hydrogen cost has dropped drastically from zero point 0.6 in between zero point 0.6 to 1.2 dollars per kg, from 1.7 to 2.4. RTC renewable is again dropping from 2.1 to 0.9 dollars per kg, and gray hydrogen will be increasing. It was in between 1.8 to 2.7. In 2050, it is anticipated that it will be in between 1.9 to 2.9 dollars per kg. So green hydrogens, if you see the graph, the green one is basically green hydrogen from on-site renewables. Then blue line is green hydrogen from RTC renewables with TND, transportation and distribution waivers. And the central blue line, dark one, is most competitive blue hydrogen, and gray is obviously the gray hydrogen price range. So if you see the graph, the price of hydrogen, green hydrogen from on-site and green hydrogen from RTC renewables are dropping from 2020 to 2050 drastically. This is also a good sign that if anyone is getting engaged in production of green hydrogen, whether for the retail purpose with the oil refineries or connecting their plant to the national gas grid. So this is a very good business to because the future is bright. Now coming to the next slide, continuing to that, just for these statements, that if we go for a price parity basis, the green hydrogen share will be growing from 16% in 2030 to almost 94% by 2050. And this translates that cumulative electrolyzer capacity demand will increase from 20 gigawatt by 2030 to 226 gigawatt. And this is the reason the cost of electrolyzers will be dropping drastically. So the cumulative value of the green hydrogen market in India will be around 8 billion US dollar by 2030, and you can see hoping 340 billion dollar by 2050. So electrolyzer market size will be in India will be increasing from 5 billion US dollar to 31 billion US dollar by 2050. So this is one of the reasons that market demand will be more, prospects are bright. So obviously the cost of electrolyzer goes down, then cost of green hydrogen production is also going down. In the next slide, Visionary 2030, the electrolyzer target market. So if you see that I'm showing few colors. The blank is green hydrogen exports, blue is product export incentives, red ones are pilots, and again that green one is mandates, viability, gap finding, and addressable demand. So if you see from refineries to visionary demand target, so visionary demand target is the last one, right hand side, that is blue orange color. So we can see there is demand up to 2030, that most of the demands will be there in all the cases related to refineries, production of ammonia, steel, methanol, then you can say CGD, I mean city gas distributions, SDVs, So everywhere, demand of hydrogen is going to have a very, you can say, very means a very effective impact. So there are some notes also. This has been taken from Niti Aayog. They have made this visionary for 2030 in case of use of green hydrogens using electrolyzers target. So first note is 1 million tons of green hydrogen corresponds to around 11 to 13 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity. Additional demand could rise from electric fuels and 24 by 7 power storage depending on the technology. And exports other than H2 carriers will refers to possible development will be there in new hydrogen carriers. If new carriers are not realized in this case, then ammonia is going to fulfill this proportion of demand for green hydrogen. So there is no gaps. So if in case transportation is not happening properly, distribution not happening properly, then this demand will be fulfilled or taken care by product ammonia. So these are some of the driving forces in next slides, which are for the emerging economies of green hydrogen. So you can say the renewable cost will be declining globally. Then global hydrogen production outlook is that production outlook is that by 20 this graph you can see the last 2060 the production of green hydrogen will be substantially higher, and exponential cost decline is expected for the electrolyzers. This I am already saying. So in case of alkaline electrolyzers or maybe the permeable electrolyzers, PEM electrolyzers, so you can see the cost decline is expected for the electrolyzers. Coming to the next slide, hydrogen demand outlook. If you see and potential green hydrogen share without any policy intervention, I'm saying I'm not discussing here any of the policies globally or Indian policy. In spite of that, also the hydrogen demand outlook you can see is very attractive. So this is the source from our ministries, like Ministry of Chemical Fertilizer, Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Petroleum Natural Gas, then International Energy Agency, then TERI, BCG, World Bank, RMI analysis, all are speaking on same line that demand outlook is very attractive. If you can see this graph, you can say that by 2050 there is a substantial green hydrogen share will be there in across all sectors of industries. If you go to current cost economies of India, green hydrogen production in India, so you can say green hydrogen in next slide. We have three parameters I have shown here, where you can see one is green hydrogen, one is green hydrogen to natural gas, and one is coal-based hydrogen. So coal-based hydrogen obviously is the blue one. So you can see this is sourced from RMI analysis that is based upon for the green natural gas and coal-based from TERI and BNEF. So here you can see the green one. The green hydrogen is much higher than other cases of blue hydrogens, which are maybe from the coal based or maybe from the natural gas. So green hydrogen is basically superseding all types of hydrogen which were conventionally being produced earlier because of many benefits. One is the benefit of climate, benefit of our policies, benefit of the requirement, and also the cost is very low. If we do not consider electrolyzer, that there's no cost of production to green hydrogen. But presently electrolyzer is in the inception stage. So as you can see, in coming 20 by 2030 it will be lesser than 50% of the existing price. So what is the opportunity for the green hydrogen in India? In next slide you can see this is the opportunity. So opportunity is divided into four quadrants. So hydrocarbon share of product cost, then you can see sector share of total green hydrogen demand. So the low cost, high impact, it is basically impacting the refineries. So refinery will be the most user of green hydrogen. And if you go for the high cost, high impact, and ammonia is it will be replaced by hydrogen. And also in case of methanol, which is high cost, low impact, here you can see hydrogen impact is less. In the top left hand side you can see, but more prominently we can see the green hydrogen on the right hand side bottom. So because it has low cost and high impact for the so for Indian economy presently the green hydrogen will be more useful for the refineries than others. Means second is methanol, sorry, not methanol, ammonia production, which is used for the fertilizers plant and all. And we can see later on it will come to the steel, it will come to CGD, it will come to methanol, but slowly, slowly. So this is the bubble size you can think of. So by the size of the bubble, you can say by presently by 2030, it will have more impact on refineries and ammonia production. So this is also the next slide is the advantages. What are the advantages of green hydrogen? Like as I said, these are 100% sustainable. These are storable. These are versatile because it can be converted, transformed to electricity and synthetic gas. But there are some disadvantages also. This is the next slide. But disadvantages which I am showing next slide. The first one is very temporary. It will be coming down very soon by 2050. The high cost only because of electrolyzer. Then high energy consumption is presently happening because it is particularly requires more energy than other fuel, but research is going on. So the second point is also to be taken care by globally. And third, there is obviously safety issue because we know hydrogen is very reactive. So there's no other solution to it, but we have to be very careful storing because whosoever discussed with me, I used to say to them that don't take hydrogen lightly. What are the impact of green hydrogen in the next slide? First impact, it will be helping in our electricity production, drinking water generators. It will be helping in our energy storage, like compressed hydrogen tanks are capable of storing energy for long rides. It can be used for the tanks and trucks. It will be useful for transportation and mobility. Then next slide is the policy. Just one pager I have added. This is the government policy, New Hydrogen Policy 2022, where you can have 10 support from the government. Manufacturers can get. So these are the 10 pointers. So this will be helpful for you to understand. Like single portal for clearances is there, connectivity and priority is there. There's a waiver of interest transmission charges for next 25 years. Then they will get open access to transmission within 15 days of applications. They'll be allowed to set up their own bunkers, their ports for storage and distributions. Now coming to the next slide, just one
We
slide. I'm
also have
seeing.
Ms. Neha who will be talking a little bit more on the policies.
Oh,
Please continue.
yeah, she will speak. Yeah. So next slide, just one pager. One is technical. So this production process of hydrogen happens in these four types. One is called thermochemical process, which consists of again four types: natural gas reforming, biomass gasification, biomass derived liquid reforming, then solar thermochemical hydrogen. Then second one is electrolytic process we discussed. Third is direct solar water splitting process, so where we can use photo electrochemical process or photobiological process. And fourth is biological processes where microbial biomass conversions can happen and photobiological. Next slide, it is just a setup cost. This is the standard setup cost which is being calculated by TERI and organizations like L&T and many other organizations who have started their pilot. So here it is being said that electrolysis of ammonia in wastewater consumes this much of electrical energy so that it can produce 1 kg of hydrogen. But as I said, fuels, it is a very important and significant development is happening where it takes only 33 kilowatt hour of electrical energy. So 1 kg of hydrogen can produce so much of energy, you can see. The current green hydrogen production cost is in between rupees 320 to 330 per kg, which will drop down by 50% in coming years. So green hydrogen cost will be potentially fall to 160 to 2030 and buying parity with comparison to grey hydrogen and other fossils. So this is my small presentations where I tried to cover three aspects: technical, commercial, and also the present situations in comparison to the earlier situations happening in our country and globally. So
Thank
thank you
you.
once again
Uh,
for patience. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Pranjal. It was a very crisp and kind of a brief presentation. Also, we have a lot of questions, but I'll hold on to it and have the Q&A session at the end. Meanwhile, I would now call upon Mr. Mohit from GPS Renewables. Mr. Mohit, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I mentioned, maybe Mohit, you can walk us through your initiative, the GPS ARIA, what your initiative, the GPS ARIA focus on the hydrogen and the green hydrogen sector. And then, I could shoot a few questions
Sure.
related to this field.
Sure. So I have a small presentation on GPS renewables and ARIA. Just run through it
Sure.
because most of it would be on the generic of GPS renewables, and then maybe we can go through the question answers that are there.
Yeah. So, are you able to present?
I think I've already shared with your team.
You have shared the
Yeah,
presentation. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
yeah. So, yeah, the next slide. So, GPS is basically a company that was started in 2012, and our primary focus was small biogas plants. We currently have about 125 of those in most of the marquee clients that you can see here. And in 2018, we decided to go for a large-scale biogas plant, which was the first the SSO-based bioplant that is commissioned in Indore. We have investors from Kairos Caspian from Netherlands, as well as SBI Cap Ventures from India. We are also co-developing projects with companies like Mitsui and Osaka Gas for biogas sector. Next slide. So governance. So we have a strong team at GPS. Apart from the founders, we have people like Mr. V. Subramaniam and Pratima Ma'am as our independent directors. And keeping our ESG strong, we have auditors like KPMG, owners engineers like Fishner, and Khaitan and K-Law as our legal advisors. Next slide, please. So under GPS, we have multiple heads, GPS being the parent firm, which is the EPC firm. We have a climate software lab that does the the software development for GPS, where we have also developed a landslide monitoring progress, the software which is now being used by many state governments. We have an R&D center with ARI, ProEps, which is our designing engineering division, and ARIA, which is the project platform which owns the company. I think this. Hello. Yeah, next slide, please.
I guess
Am I audible?
the slides are stuck. Go to the next slide. Slide 5.
So basically, there are multiple awards that GPS has won over the years. Next slide.
Next. Next slide. After this. Go to the next.
Is there any?
Mohit, I think there is some delay in the slide transition.
Okay, so maybe you can just we can just take it off the slides. If it's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically the growth and the strength of GPS. So we've been growing rapidly, and this right now what you see on screen is the Indore plant that was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister, which is currently the largest SSO-based CNG producing plant, and it's been operational and successfully operating since 1 year. Now you can just skip the next two slides if you want, just to there's some issue.
Mohit.
Maybe you can just give me the access. I can present the screen. That's fine with.
Are you able to share now?
Yeah. Is it
We'll try it 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Now it's visible.
Okay. So, as part of the GPS area, which is being led by me, so this is a projects platform under which we are executing many biofuel projects. Uh, First couple of projects are bio CNG, which are paddy straw to CNG, which are coming up in Hisar and Panipat in Haryana. Apart from this, our focuses are on green hydrogen, on biofuel and energy crop using afforestation, and a 2G ethanol project that is coming up in Mizoram on bamboo. So these are the other projects that are doing. On green hydrogen, we have a team comprising of Mr. Milind Patke, who is the president of biofuels at GPS. He was earlier the executive director of BPCL. We have Mr. Shantanu Roy, who is the principal advisor on hydrogen, who was the executive director marketing of GAIL. Along with him, we have Ram Kumar, who is an advisor to us and also the India head of High Gear. So GPS already has a tie-up with High Gear for the alkali-based electrolyzer. High Gear is a company from Netherlands which has over 100 installations throughout the world on green hydrogen. We are also working closely with AdWord for the solar aspect, that is the power requirement for green hydrogen. Now, on green hydrogen, basic, what is green hydrogen? So green hydrogen is produced using generally electrolysis of water. So it is where renewable source of power is used, where the carbon impact is not there in the generation of the hydrogen. The source of power could be wind, could be solar, or any other renewable energy. Currently in India, there are
Mohit,
the
can you do
government.
full screen? Because it's becoming very small and not able to actually read through the content.
So currently in India, the focus of the government has very keenly been on hydrogen. We've had multiple policies that have come from the government of India promoting green hydrogen. Uh, the timelines from the NITI Aayog have shown that by 2030, green hydrogen would become a major source of energy for the country. And the way the industry is moving, we can expect that the transition would be faster than what is expected by the what is our proposal currently? What we are proposing to many industries is that we will set up the solar park along with the uh, a source of power, which could be either solar or wind, and through the grid we will supply the power to the green hydrogen generation unit, which would be located within the premises of the customer, and we would pipe the gas directly to the customer. The advantages of this model is that a huge cost that is incurred in the compression and transportation of green hydrogen could be omitted, bringing green hydrogen on a more competitive level compared to the currently used gray hydrogen. Uh, the primary industries where we are focusing are refineries, steel, pharma, and fertilizer. Uh, Unfortunately, there is no mandate currently. There is only unwritten understanding where the government has put into the refineries and the fertilizer industry to convert at least 3% of their hydrogen requirement to green. But yes, refineries as well as certain fertilizer companies as well as certain steel plants who are now exporting green steel to Europe have a requirement that has come up for green hydrogen, where there are companies like us are focusing on starting off and getting into the market. Apart from this, we are also exploring options where hydrogen is not only used as a molecule, but is also an input for power. Unfortunately, the power generation currently from hydrogen is not that prevalent because it's not economical compared to other renewable energy sources. But in the days to come, that will definitely change. So currently, what Sir had just presented in the previous presentation, we are proud to say that we are currently already proposing a tentative price of rupees 300 per kg. The capital cost along with the entire project is being planned to be invested by us. The water and the land at the site would be something that you would want reissued from the client, and the land near the hydrogen and the utilities at the plant would be given to us at a nominal value. So this was the basic presentation that we have on green hydrogen. Apart from the questions that we have, we can get into that and look at
Right.
answering those.
Right. I would like to start off from the last statement you made itself. You said you're going to set up this plant. Would you be able to share what is the capex and what kind of production?
Unfortunately, there are multiple parts of this plant, capex. One is the electrolyzer part, one is the solar part, one is the statutory part. So these are numbers we can share on a more smaller group, but not at a forum like this.
And what is the kind of production that you're looking at from this plant?
So the prices that we're guaranteeing right now of 300, we want a minimum production of at least 3,000 meter cube per hour. Anything above that is something that we're comfortable with. We are working on smaller modules also, but the prices then get distorted drastically.
Okay. Next question is, what is your view on using hydrogen as a fuel? Is it
The transportation sector?
already in the stage of which is past the R&D stage, or is it still in the R&D stage?
So in the transport, I think the major issue right now is the infrastructure. So hydrogen as a fuel is something which has come into play. Toyota last year had launched a vehicle which is running on hydrogen. We were there in the inauguration, so we had seen the vehicle firsthand also. And these are marvels. But eventually, the main core of the matter comes into the infrastructure. For example, CNG has been there in India for more than 40 years. But the main core of CNG fuels in India as a transport sector has come into play in the last 10 years when the infrastructure of a gas-based economy has been spread. Luckily for hydrogen, because hydrogen is also part of gas, hydrogen can be merged with CNG and be used as a co-fuel. And but for it to be used as only hydrogen as transport, there needs to be a parallel infrastructure set up for hydrogen, which would take its own due course and time. For larger vehicles, for large scale operations, yes, hydrogen has an advantage compared to electric because of the light weight. So the weight to energy ratio in hydrogen is much better. So that is something that can be used, but that is still in a very preliminary stage, and it will take time for it to come into the country.
Right. Recently, in the India Energy Week, which was held in Bangalore, there were a few displays of hydrogen-fueled bus and hydrogen-fueled trucks, especially from ONGC and also from RIL as well.
RIL had also launched a truck, I think, during that time when we were there. So
right.
So basically, for large-scale operation, there's a huge transportation involved. Long-scale transportation. The weight to energy ratio becomes very important because eventually they're transporting weight. So in these cases, buses and trucks, yes, hydrogen will have a better impact in the long run, but it's still upcoming. So it will take about, say, 10 years for it to be prevalent in the society.
Right. I think this question has already been discussed once in the group, once in this webinar, but I would like to pick your brains also. Is it the cost of, what do you think will promote the usage of hydrogen to a large scale in the coming future?
See, there needs to be a push. So, for example, when I told recently in the slide that the steel industry, there is an interest from the steel industry to the industry. That is because in Europe, green steel is something which is being sought after, and that is using green hydrogen. So into the cold pressing of steel, in the cold rolling of steel, hydrogen is as a gas which is a requirement. So it depends on the demand to come in. The demand will come in only on two reasons. Either it needs to be pushed onto them through policies, through market-driven sources, or by pricing. Now, hydrogen currently, we've done studies, is fairly expensive compared to gray hydrogen. Gray hydrogen today is about 150, 160 rupees. green hydrogen today, what we propose is around 500 rupees at a large scale. As you go to small scale, green hydrogen prices go up to 600 to 700 rupees. But it would be wrong on our part to say gray hydrogen is only at 160, 170. There are markets in India where gray hydrogen today is selling at 900 rupees. So it's identifying the correct market, identifying the correct use case where we can supply the green hydrogen using the best technologies to be able to deliver that at the desired prices.
Right. And is there any other production method which could bring down these prices?
So currently in green hydrogen, there are four methods that we know of. There are the two electrolyzers, which is the alkaline and the PEM-based electrolyzer. Apart from that, there's a couple of biological processes, and which is still pretty much in R&D. And the other option that is now developing is because of SAT, which came in 5 years back, biogas and renewable fuels has already taken a push, and the government has a mandate of setting up has a target of setting up 5,000 plants in the near future. So in the SMR route, because SMR is as a technology for hydrogen has been prevalent in India and is one of the cheapest forms of hydrogen generation. SMR plants are located at most of the large hydrogen companies that require hydrogen. So most of the fertilizer companies or ammonia companies already have an SMR plant. So what we can do that we can set up a biogas plant or a CNG plant next to the bio-CNG plant next to their requirement and inject the desired quantity of gas into the pipeline, thereby replacing the natural gas requirement with biogas. That's why thereby converting that blue hydrogen or gray hydrogen into green hydrogen based on the technology based on the raw material being converted into renewable source. So that is something that is being pushed right now and being developed with a few fertilizer companies. Yes.
Right. So what you're saying is an entrepreneur could set up a biogas plant right next to this, fertilizer plant. What is the kind of land requirement he would have to set
Depends on
up
the capacity. So, for example, as it was the technology. So, for example, for setting up a plant to generate, say, uh, 15 tons of CNG per day, they would require a land of about 10 acres.
And if I were to ask the same question for setting up a plant to produce hydrogen through the SMR method, what kind of land would be required?
That would be much lesser, but the problem would be after the generation of hydrogen, you would also require to store the hydrogen, to pipe the hydrogen, and all of that. So, for example, in the case of like right now, we're talking to many of the refineries where they have the largest use of hydrogen. If we set up an electrolyzer within the premises, they need to give us land within the premises, and land within a plant after which has been running for such a long time becomes very valuable because they've developed, they've grown in size in so many years. So they need to dedicate that much land to us, have given us the utilities, power, and everything within the premises.
Right. But in general, if somebody is doing a standalone hydrogen production plant, what is the kind of land we should be looking at?
So for a 150 meter cube electrolyzer setup, it's about 22 meters by 15 meters. That includes everything. So
sorry, how much is it? 22?
22 meters by 15 meters.
Okay. Okay, that's very small.
So for the plants the tie-up that we have with Higher, so the up to the 500 meter cube per hour system is all containerized within 20-foot and 40-foot containers. So these are not that big plants; they're very small plants. It depends on statutory approvals on the PESO side and all of that, the safety angles and storage sides that needs to decide on the actual land requirement. The main plant is only one container.
Right. And right now it's open market, right? He'll be selling it in the open market. There is no government buyback policies and things like that. Like how you have for bio-CNG.
So we are in discussion with a couple of companies where we would want to set up the plant for them on take or pay basis, where they would have to offtake the gas on a continuous basis from us.
Okay. Okay, so I think Mohit, it was kind of a quick fire kind of a session, very valuable, of course, because GPS has been working on the ground, not just in green hydrogen production, but also in bio CNG production as well. The last time I met Varun, he was also talking about a lot of initiatives that are coming up, even in the geothermal sector as well. So I think there are a lot of questions that have come up, but before that, I would now want to call upon Mr. Sulabh, and then maybe I'll get back to you with the questions. Thank you, Mohit. Mr. Sulabh, I think we are not able to hear your voice.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah. I'm able to hear you now. Great. So I think the last two speakers, kind of opened the entire green hydrogen, the process, and what is the demand, why it is expensive to produce, and what is the future trends as well. So with that, I would now want to pick your brains on understanding what is the future trend of green hydrogen in India.
Okay. So let me start with a very basic fundamentals why we need hydrogen, and then I'll take you what can be the future.
Right.
So everybody today is talking about climate change, pollution, and what's the solution? So the solution for reducing carbon footprints is definitely renewables. So where exactly this hydrogen comes into picture? The areas, applications where you cannot electrify things, and you cannot use renewable directly. Those are the applications where exactly hydrogen fits in. So hydrogen is people have started talking about hydrogen till from some 70s or 80s. But at that time, that they were considering hydrogen as a source of energy. That idea could not work out because it's not available in free stage, and to generate hydrogen, you need much more amount of energy what you can really produce from hydrogen. So now today we are talking of hydrogen as an energy carrier, where we will be generating energy from renewables, storing it into hydrogen, and then using it in applications where we cannot electrify directly, or it's very difficult to electrify. For example, steel industry contributes somewhere around 10 to 12% of total global pollution, which is a huge number, and there's no solution for that. So that's where hydrogen comes into picture, to replace coal with hydrogen, and we can avoid a big cut in really pollution. So like that, there are several other sectors where we can use hydrogen as a feedstock. We can use as an energy source, uh, and we can reduce the pollution. So fundamentals. If I talk about few sectors like feedstock, where like ammonia, fertilizers, everybody is talking about. Steel industry, everyone is talking about. Apart from that, plastics is a big application, where plastics use methanol as a raw material in a huge quantity, and currently it's the third largest application where hydrogen can be directly consumed. So plastic is one industry, food processing is there, glass industry is there, where all we can consume this hydrogen. If I talk about transportation, there's a lot of discussions on cars and personal automobiles, but I don't really feel it's going to happen because EV is much more viable, convenient to use. Yeah, definitely in some of the heavy transportations which are going for a long distance, there it may come into picture. But major application will be in transportation side, will be in shipping and maybe in aerospace. Shipping is a huge demand which is going to come up in near future. People have already started working. Then the third domain is heat. A lot of industrial processes where electrical furnaces cannot do the good job. There, for heating purpose, hydrogen can be used. And then power is one more sector. Even currently, we are feeling it's not viable, and maybe in India it may never pick up to use hydrogen for power generation. But in the countries where the renewable is not available all the 12 months, where they need seasonal energy storages, or in countries where they are not able to fulfill complete demand through renewables and they have to import energy, their hydrogen can play a big role. Like recently we are hearing a lot of Japan and Europe who wants to import hydrogen in huge quantities. So that is where hydrogen can be used for power generation. uh, Currently, specifically in Japan, people have started exploring to use ammonia in the gas furnaces or gas power plants to cut down their carbon emissions, or do a minor changes in their coal plants to use ammonia and use some portion of ammonia in their coal power plants also, so they can cut down the emissions, fit into the regulatory norms, and run their existing infrastructure for some more time. So that is where the market is going. If I talk about India, the current demand is somewhere around 7 million tons, and which may increase to somewhere around 27 to 30 million tons by 2050. And if we just replace a small portion of this with green, it's a very huge demand. If I want to replace some 5 million tons of this hydrogen with green, the capacity for renewable what will be required might be somewhere around 15-20 gigawatts. So it's a huge demand for India. One more interesting facts about India, which is different from whole of the world, is for everyone, hydrogen is cutting down the emissions, and it's about green. But India, it has dual benefits. Not only it's about the green and environment, but it's also about the economy. We can take the advantage of this opportunity to become a big exporter of power. We can cut down our crude imports in a big way, which will save a lot of foreign exchange, and it will have a big impact in overall economy of the country. So I see a lot of initiatives happening within India. Some newses are coming from UP. Tamil Nadu government is supporting several developers, giving subsidies. Now, recently, Telangana government is organizing this one events where they are discussing with industries how they can support to take green hydrogen projects in their state. So a lot of things are happening within the country and globally, and I feel it's a very right time to invest and get into that.
Also, I think I've heard a lot from the UP government also. They're,
Yes,
promoting this, and they're helping in capex and a lot of
yes, they have launched one draft policy also. So that's there. Uh, few more things on pricing of green hydrogen. Uh, if I compare, because a lot of people are talking about cost of electrolyzers, but 70% of the cost of green hydrogen is dependent on renewable cost, and only 30% is on electrolyzer cost and financing cost. So if the renewable cost really goes down, the cost of green hydrogen will definitely come down in a big way. What else you want
right.
me to?
So yeah, the next question what we would want to ask is, say we have a lot of entrepreneurs on this particular session,
Yeah.
who would want to know, if they want to set up a standalone unit, what are the kind of considerations that they have to consider to choose the right location?
See, location selection is totally depend on what kind of project and what size of project you want to do. Let me tell you what's already there in India. For electrolyzer technology, there's nothing new in India. There's lot of electrolyzers which are already working. The only difference is they are operating from grid power, and they are not using the green power. Mainly in these steel industries and thermal power plants, they all have these electrolyzer based hydrogen generation system. And wherever the requirement is not big, if you want to generate a small quantity of hydrogen of several hundred meter cube per hour, there's no other solution. If you go for steam reforming or other solution, they are not at all viable, and you have to go for electrolyzer only. Second thing, if I see local market, you will see hydrogen selling at $10, $12, even much higher than that. So for small setups, there's a lot of opportunity. You can contact these companies which are into which need a small size of electrolyzers. And the best way, I believe, will be if we can go and set up these electrolyzers within the premises where they have to use. Because hydrogen transportation is a big problem, and it's a huge cost. If you want to transport within a few kilometers, also you need to have a totally dedicated setup and fleet for transporting hydrogen. Secondly, compressing hydrogen is again a huge cost. Liquefying is totally non-viable for if you want to transport within the country. You have to compress, and again, it's you have to spend energy, which is again a cost for compression. So the best way is to go and set up where you want to consume. Apart from that, if you want to sell in a local market, the best place will be where you have maximum consumers. So I feel setting hydrogen plants, the distributed system may be a better way of doing. But if you are planning for a really large plant, then you have to plan in totally different way. At that point, then how you are procuring renewable energy, that becomes very critical. As I said, the pricing, 70% of pricing is coming from power price only. So if you are procuring, transferring your power through grid and giving small charges also to grid, it will make a big difference. So how you are procuring power, how you are going to transport, and where you want to transport, all those things come into picture while selecting the location.
Perfect. Perfect. So I would, thank you for the quick kind of information that you have given. I would now want to call upon Ms. Neha to go through her presentation. But just before that, there is a small poll that has come up on your screen. If you can all take a few seconds and answer this poll questions. I think there are 4 or 5 questions in the poll. Maybe all of you who are listening to this session on mobile as well as on the desktops and laptops, please take a look at your screen and maybe you can answer this poll. Meanwhile, Ms. Neha, your PPT will be presented now, and after a gap of maybe about 10 to 15 seconds, we can start off.
Sure. Thank you.
Once again, all the audience and attendees, I would request you to answer the poll that has come up. About 4 to 5 questions. Thank you for answering the poll. So, Ms. Neha will now, walk us through some of the government policies and initiatives that have been promoted for the green hydrogen sector. Over to you, Ms.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce Bridge to India to all of you. Can we go to the next slide? Next. So we are an independent clean energy consulting and research services company, and we basically have 2 business verticals: market intelligence and consulting. We have worked with all the stakeholders across the value chain in the renewable power sector, be it equipment suppliers, be it developers, be it consumers, and be it independent think tanks and research bodies that we have worked with on various themes. On the next slide, you can see some of the themes that we have worked on, including market assessment, bid advisory, entry strategies, tender design. And also in the next slide, there are some very important themes, like, for example, with the corporate consumers who work on the renewable power roadmap and help them to increase the share of renewables in their electricity consumption, and also do a lot of policy advocacy with international think tanks and also corporate consumers to help them promote enabling policies in their respective states of working, where they can improve the sector for their growth and to overall improve the growth of renewables in the country. And on the next slide, this was the consulting part, and on the next slide we can see that these are the 4 range of products that we have in the market intelligence space. We are known for the most comprehensive research capability in the sector. We do reports on a monthly, annually, and weekly basis, and these are some of our reports on your screen that you can see. And I want to mention this flagship product that we have, which is India RE Navigator, which is the one-stop market intelligence portal for everyone who's interested in the renewable power sector. It includes tender and projects, policies, equipment, and EPC prices, power costs, leading players, and news and research, and many more things related to renewable sector. And it's 24/7 available. So whenever you get time, please go on to indiarenavigator.com, and you can look at a lot of news and information related to renewable sector there. I would just dive it into the topic of green hydrogen now. So before that, I would like to also talk about on the next slide some pieces that we have done on the green hydrogen spaces. So we have done some opinion pieces on green hydrogen mission related to the policies and also the issued policy that was in the last year, and we have done a market brief on early growth opportunities for refineries and fertilizers, and how they can venture into this space of green hydrogen, how lucrative it is for them, and what are the challenges and what is required for their sustained growth and for them to take off the ground to start with the green hydrogen production facilities in their respective businesses. Now I will dive right into the topic of green hydrogen. So just to set the context as a country that why we need India, why as a country we need green hydrogen, as we all know that India has committed to net zero economy to be built by 2070, and we have a very high emission. We are like the third largest emitter in the world, and the emissions stand at about 2.8 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. And if you look at the source of the emissions, if you can look at the screen, at the energy, industry, agriculture are the three biggest emitter, and if you include also the transport, they four together account for more than 80% of the emissions. And we need for an ultimate tool of decarbonization for these four industries. And if you look at the next slide, you can see that the hydrogen has become as one of the biggest tool as for decarbonization. It can go across industries, be it energy, industry, and transport, and it is only because of its wide applicability and as it can be used as a fuel, as a feedstock, or even as an energy storage, and which has really made green hydrogen the talk of the town and being touted as like the fuel of the future, because it's truly unique because of its wide applicability. And on the next slide. This is basically showing that in the range of decarbonization levers, the green hydrogen is really can fit in three different spaces as an alternative fuel, energy storage, and even in sustainable transport. And on the next slide, we can see that this is especially more important for hard to abate sectors which are desperately looking for a decarbonization tool, something like green hydrogen, which has given them a ray of hope. And industries like iron, steel, cement, fertilizers, refining, and heavy transport are expected to become one of the biggest consumers of green hydrogen, because they're really looking for a cheaper, not just a cheaper, but a more environmentally considerable alternative to decarbonize their businesses. And that being said, the challenges are really, because this market is really in the nascent stage, and there are very critical challenges which are limiting its wide-scale adoption, which includes limited electrolyzer manufacturing capacity in the country at the moment, the really high cost, the large infrastructure requirement, and the physical properties of green hydrogen that really makes it explosive and corrosive. And that really needs to be taken into account before we think about making green hydrogen as a mainstream fuel in the country. In the next slide, if we look at the total supply chain of green hydrogen, at each step, I want to focus that we need policy support. We need specific policy intervention at each level of supply chain, and that is because every step is very unique. The whole concept is very new to the country, starting with renewable generation and transmission. We know that the market has become very mature, but the cost is still high to make green hydrogen at a very competitive price as compared to grey hydrogen. And renewable power is one of the most important and capital-intensive component in producing green hydrogen. And as we know, green hydrogen production requires relatively stable supply of power which is very difficult when we are working with something like a renewables, which is very intermittent. We need that to optimize electrolyzer utilization rate and performance efficiency. And these stable production rate is also desirable to minimize investment in hydrogen storage infrastructure. And that would mean that we would need investment in the power storage facilities. So about 1 million ton per annum of hydrogen production requires about 18 to 20 gigawatt of renewable power generation capacity, which would, if is tied up with sufficient storage capacity, would lead to an approximately $20 billion of investment, which is quite high. And that would mean that, if you want to transport hydrogen, it would need a lot of investment in making the infrastructure the infrastructure available, which would take a lot of investment as compared to transporting renewable power, which would require less investment because the requisite infrastructure is already there. So it is a much easier prospect to transport renewables than to transport hydrogen. And the next concept of production with electrolyzer is also very new, and there is absolutely no domestic manufacturing capacity. We're still building it. There is very small capacity that is available, and the technology is very expensive. The efficiency rates are still something that we are innovating, and the different manufacturing electrolyzer manufacturers are still trying to improve on the efficiency rates. So we still need to find the most viable and commercially viable and technology viable technology of electrolyzer that can be used at a wider scale. Is it alkaline, it is proton exchange membrane, or is it solid oxide electrolyzer? So there is still a lot of research that is required in those spaces. And also when it comes to transportation and storage, as I mentioned, the fuel is very corrosive and very explosive. So there are very several considerations that would have to be considered when we are dealing with the transport and storage. And there are a lot of options available that people are talking about that can be used to transport and storage, but there's still a lot of research required to understand that what are the most viable or viable alternatives and options available right now to transport and store hydrogen. Moving on to the next slide, which talks about the cost of green hydrogen, which is completely indicative. Right now, the cost without the subsidy support, the costs are really high, about $7 per kg. And I've heard from the other speakers that the cost is going to get very competitive, and that's true by 2020, 2030 and 27. In fact, the cost is going to come down at a very comparable prices to grey hydrogen, and that will only happen if there is waiver of most grid charges, and there is also lower power consumption and reduced cost, there is lower capital cost, and there is higher operating efficiency. If you look at this chart, you can see the renewable power, like the electricity and the fuel part, really accounts for the bulk of the cost of producing green hydrogen. More than 70% is coming from power. So there is need for some incentives in the power generation, power transmission space that can really help to make green hydrogen at a competitive rates to compare with grey hydrogen. So it's very important to focus on the power requirement and the grid charges at the moment. Moving on to the next slide, before I really dive into the Indian policies and initiatives, I want to spend a little time to talk about the policies and incentives which are available across the globe. And as you can see, as you must have also heard, the US and Europe have announced significant subsidies to produce green hydrogen domestically. Even Canada has proposed 30% capital subsidy for renewable projects and 40% tax credits for green hydrogen projects in an effort to catch up with countries like US. And China has also identified green hydrogen as a national priority and already account for about 50% of the total electrolyzer manufacturing capacity. Even if you look at Australia and countries in MENA region, they're really looking to become the exporters of green hydrogen, and that is something that India is also envisioning in the moment. And there's also substantial funding that has been allocated in these countries to make it a very viable space for the businesses and the industry to start into the green hydrogen space. But one country that really needs a lot of discussion and a focus here is the US, which came up with its Inflation Reduction Act, which is the IRA, and that really changed the game for everyone. If you move on to the next slide, you can see that there is incentive for each part of the entire value chain. So there is incentive, there's manufacturing tax credit for solar and wind equipment if you're manufacturing that, even storage batteries, and there is tax credit for renewable generation. You get even if you produce power using green hydrogen, you're eligible for this tax credit. And then you also get a clean hydrogen tax credit, which is about $3 per kg. So the cost really which is indicatively around $4 per kg in US, has come down to $1 per kg kg, which is quite really the aim for every country at the moment. And this reduction really shows that a country like US, with their stackable incentives, one incentive can be layered on each other and really drives down the cost. The total cost of green hydrogen has really shown countries like India that how really incentives can be put and what kind of policy support is required. And this has made everyone jealous. Everybody's insecure in the world at the moment that how other countries can really put forward an equally attractive policy to make green hydrogen. To make green hydrogen at competitive rates as US will be able to do it in the next few years. So this is especially more important because India, on the next slide, as we can see, the target has set up a very ambitious target of 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen production per annum, and that is until 2030. That would mean that there is a capacity addition required for renewables to 125 gigawatt and electrolyzer capacity of 40 gigawatt. And the document on the next slide, the mission really sets out an additional aspiration of becoming a global hydrogen hub. So India really is looking at the vision of making India as a global hydrogen hub by adding another 10 million metric ton per annum capacity by 2030 for only exports. And to help initial scale up and reduce costs for early adopters, the government is aiming to provide financial support of 197 billion rupees, which will be split across subsidy programs, pilot projects, and other areas including R&D and consumer awareness. So this plan, basically, I would say that the mission is really macroscopic in vision and covers all key techno-commercial aspects and soft initiatives, including R&D, testing facilities, interministerial coordination, international collaboration, skill building, technical standards, you name it, and everything is there in the document. But the idea is it really possible? The vision is extremely ambitious. And the anticipated renewable capacity of 125 gigawatt is a little bit more than what we have been able to do in the past few years. So we have the renewable sector has already have some plans to scale up the power capacity to a certain level. And then if it layer the 125 gigawatt target over and above that, that would mean that we will have to add 60 gigawatt of capacity every year to reach that target. And that seems very unreasonable because that is about 2.5x of the current renewable capacity addition rate that we have achieved in the last 5 years. So the capacity addition that we are envisioning is a bit too much for us to even think about and maybe not possible. And even if we look at the total budget that has been allocated as subsidy, it is still a bit too much and maybe not enough to make a difference. And if we want to talk about the initial green hydrogen policy also, which provided incentives like waiver of interstate transmission charges for renewable power for 25 years, is something that was already in place. And the green open access rules already has made a provision for all ISDS renewable projects to be exempted of the ISDS charges. There is open access connectivity approval that will be given in 15 days and open access banking facility until end of each month. That is something that also the policy proposed initially. So, but these are under the jurisdiction of the states, and it's very happy to know that many states like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, UP, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, a lot of these states have started to adopt these rules, and they are going to provide these facilities. So that is a great news for all of us. But there's still a lot of policy requirements that are still missing in this policy and the mission document. And a great learning and a great lesson here would be from a state like UP. On the next slide, which has introduced a very, very eye-catching policy. UP, this is still a draft policy. UP is providing capital cost grant for R&D, for land and water, for renewable power, electrolyzers, and OPEX. So this is how really it is done. UP is really showing us how it is done. UP is showing that you need capital, you need subsidy, not subsidy, but you need some kind of support at each level to make it really possible for any businesses to start prospering in the state. And if this draft policy becomes final, it will be really interesting for the other states also. They may also start issuing equally attractive policy, and that will be very interesting to see. So Uttar Pradesh policy is amazing, but it's still in the draft stage, so it is yet to be finalized, and the time will tell when it will become final, how many incentives will be retained or removed in the final one. So to really sum it up here in my conclusion, I would say that the policy and the mission that we have introduced, the government has introduced, is definitely definitely really very attractive, and it is very going to be helpful for all the businesses to start green hydrogen production. But the idea is that there is not more clarity on what kind of capital subsidy is. The government has allocated a financial budget, but we don't know the quantum of capital subsidy. We don't know when the PLI scheme, what is the kind of incentive for green hydrogen manufacturing capacity that there would be. So those kind of things that we are not clear on, and only in the next this year there will be hopefully more clarity on those parts. UP, if finalize their policy, that will be very interesting. But we need more policies like US, which is giving more clarity on what kind of how to reduce costs. Was talking about really that if you're making solar equipments, you get subsidy, you get capital incentive. If you are producing renewable power, you get incentive. If you're producing green hydrogen, then you're getting incentive. So we need something like that in the country at the moment, and that's something which is missing. And also, it is very important to understand that even if you're talking about production, what is equally important is consumption. There needs to be a proper consumption demand in the market to really make it incentivizing for the producers to go into this market. So there are no mandates at the moment for refineries and fertilizers, and the government has taken a U-turn on that, which they were saying that they would. There's no viability gap funding in PLI scheme, which were very expected from the government, has not come through, and all the other parts which have been outlined in the mission document should be enforced immediately in the next 1 year. That can really help the market to take off the ground. And the market is still at a really in a space where the costs are really high. So in the next few years, the market is expected to definitely be more in a better shape than right now, because the costs are really high. And with that, I would like to end here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for this, kind of a crisp presentation. The conclusion, like you mentioned, is that right now a lot of policies are in draft, and like how you said, some of the policies have to be specific to the area of, either it is related to storage, or it is related to transportation, or it is related to the kind of energy source that you're using at. Rather than a kind of a blanket policy for green hydrogen manufacturing.
Correct.
So these kind of specific details are like how Neha mentioned. It's still in the pipeline, and we are yet to get anything concrete from the government, as well as from the state government, as well as from the central government. So I thank you once again, Ms. Neha. We have overshot the time, but I think there is time for one question. This is related to the OPEX cost. So Mohit, if you are there on the call, I would want you to answer this question. If somebody who is looking at setting up a plant, what is the kind of OPEX he should be looking at?
So currently, I can on a more easier way to answer would be like, for example, if we're talking about 300 rupees as the selling price, 240 out of that is the electricity cost. So that basically understands the major chunk where the money is going.
Right, and on top of it, there is overheads, right? Plant overheads.
So the overheads and the capex is actually a small part. The major chunk is going on to the solar side, the power side, and the most important part is that what Neha also mentioned, that a lot of these policies that are there on paper, but the state cesses and the transmission charges in the state so these are yet to be adopted, and even if adopted by the state, the local departments don't know about it.
Right, there are no specific geos, right? So the local departments work on the geo,
they don't know about
have a geo yet. Yeah,
so it needs to seep into the crowd right now, and people need to get educated about it, and then only will the price of electricity come down, and thus price of hydrogen.
Right. Thank you. I think we have definitely overshot the time limit, and this being a very new topic, and something which is in demand everywhere. So we thought this session would obviously, throw some light on this, entire sector. But there are definitely a lot of unanswered questions. So I would request all the participants to, send these questions to us. We will forward it to the right, speaker, or to the right, person, and then we will make sure that it is answered. I would now like to thank all the speakers, starting from Dr. Pranjal, Mr. Mohit, Mr. Sulabh, and Ms. Neha, for giving this their time for this knowledge session, and also the participants for being patient with us and hearing to all the speakers, and being a part of this webinar. Thank you once again to all the participants as well as the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The recording has been stopped. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.